DNA Studios. Step into a new dimension.
Hello guys, welcome back to another DNA Studios episode. Okay, today we're going to get right into this. Today's episode is going to be on something that I've been watching actually for quite a while. So today, if you guys are not familiar, today's episode is going to be on Shangri-La Frontier. So if you guys don't know, this anime is a video game. It takes place in a video game world, which is it's a virtual reality game based type anime. So it's a video game based anime, similar to some of the ones you guys might be familiar with, like for example, Log Horizon and stuff like that, where you have a main protagonist who logs into a virtual world and does stuff in game. This is very similar to that. The only difference with this is that it's not anything. It's very different from Log Horizon in that this Shangri-La Frontier game. This Shangri-La Frontier anime is a MMORPG type style video game anime where it's all about virtual reality and augmented reality. So all the main characters in this show are in virtual reality and also use virtual reality and augmented reality to play games. So it's kind of takes place sort of in the future, kind of. Now, whether you can call virtual reality the future, that depends on your personal opinion. Some people think that virtual reality is the future. Some people think that augmented reality is the future. Whatever you might think, that's kind of where this anime takes place, is in virtual reality. So, and it's really cool. I recommend this series to people. It is a really awesome show. The main character in this show, you don't see much of him exactly. You see more of his game character. So his game character's name is Sunraku, and that's his character's name in the game Shangri-La Frontier in this anime. Now, he does also play a lot of other broken games and stuff like that throughout the show, so he will jump in and out of different broken games. But the series is based on original light novel and manga series, and also focuses a lot on the main character, Sunraku, and his adventures in jumping into broken or just old games that are glitchy and stuff like that, which is really cool. And he's our main protagonist throughout this whole show. Really awesome story. One of the things I do want to point out about the show, and one of the main points that I actually was good when I was going through some of the story and watching the first season of the series. One thing I do want to mention is that this story does have a unique kind of premise in that the main character does, like, his whole thing is just playing glitchy games until he goes to a game shop one day and actually does. Now keep in mind, this is him before he logs into virtual reality. So this is his actual self walking into a game store and buying an actual game, and then going into VR and going into the virtual world and popping these games into his headset and playing a virtual game. So he stumbles across, while playing all these glitchy and kind of old and kind of messed up games. One day he goes into a game store and he buys a title, a pretty well-known title in the show called Shangri-La Frontier, and he gets started playing this game, and this game has some really interesting stuff in it, which I'll get into in just a moment. And he kind of gets hooked on it. He kind of plays it, and awesome. He creates this character set. He creates a game character, and that's where you kind of get introduced to him as Sunraku and as his game character, and you kind of get familiar with his character throughout all the different types of busted games that he plays right throughout the show. They show other games, not just Shangri-La. But the coolest thing about this is that his game character is this, at least in Shangri-La, his game character is this half-naked bird man. So it's this bird mask, no shirt. He's got boxers on, kind of. But he just walks around like this. So Yeah, that's kind of his. That's kind of how you see him in this game world. In reality, he's not actually like this. And the actual person is different. But again, this does focus more on his game character. You see more of his game character than his actual self. But once or twice they flip back to his real self in the real world, but not much often. So, like I was saying before, one of the unique things that I do want to bring up about this show, and that makes the show really awesome, that I kind of liked, was the actual fact that it takes place in a game and gives a different perspective to kind of video game style anime, but also the fact that they bring in some really interesting world building pieces in here, and the way they show him jumping in through the headset looks actually something similar to what you'd have today with the virtual reality headsets, because he does jump in through a virtual reality headset. There is actually, he puts on this like little piece, this little like headset piece that he jumps in, and he's able to play games, as well as the games are all digital, so he downloads them kind of like what you do on like Xbox or PlayStation Live or whatever. He will download these games he'll buy the game on a virtual store, and then he'll download the game to his headset, and he will play these pretty sick games. So it gives like a very real feel to the actual world building. When you jump when the character jumps into the VR to the virtual game or the game world, in the animation is really sick. The animation is done really well, but when he jumps in, you have all these kind of cool quests he goes on. It brings an interesting world building element where the actual world looks really, really crazy the animation just looks crazy when they jump into this world where like there's everything from like a whole like secret missions to like Rabatuzo, which is this whole like other dimension in the game that he kind of finds out, right? And then it also jumps back once in a while. It'll jump back to the real world where if he gets stuck on a side quest in this Shangri-La Frontier game, he'll go and he'll figure out codes and like how to unlock stuff. Very, very realistic world building and amazing world building in this show. The way they present things is very interesting, but also kind of brings a lot of interesting perspectives into gaming culture, and kind of brings a little bit of reality into this like animated game type story for an anime, and very much game-based story for an anime, which is really cool. It's a game genre anime, which is cool. And some of you might know of other anime that do this too. This one was really good. The other thing too is that the other thing I do want to bring up about this was that so there are some other things. There are some other interesting things in here. So the action and combat in this show is actually really good. They bring in there are a lot of because he jumps into not just Shangri-La, because he jumps into like other games and everything. There's a mech kind of aspect to this where he's fighting giant mechs, which is in a different broken game where he uses glitches to fight these giant mechs, and they're really awesome and interesting. And it kind of also brings in a little bit of parody, because some of the other games that he jumps into, if you're a gamer, if you've been in the 90s and played any other old 90s titles, some of these games look similar or could even remind you of something you've played as a kid, which is an interesting aspect. But also the gameplay and the way that they bring in the fight scenes are amazingly done. The animation is really nice. Fight scenes are excellent. Some of the things that they bring into them too also is actually something that you could actually see in a game that you're playing currently nowadays, which is fascinating. There's just a really interesting, the fight scenes, the battles. One of the giant mech battles is actually really, really awesome in this show. He jumps into a different game that he hasn't played in a while. He takes a break from Shangri-La Frontier in one of the episodes and jumps into another game and plays that for a while. And this happens not every episode, but in a few episodes. In the first season of this show, he mostly does go. He kind of jumps around a little bit into different games in the beginning, but then once you kind of get into the first season, he does stay. There's a lot of him in Shangri-La Frontier in that game, playing that game. But in the other times that he does jump into a different game, or the times where he is jumping to like a broken game, they bring in some really interesting aspects with the fights where he's using either a glitch in the game to win, or the game is just really buggy where the whole game itself has either the people playing or the players playing all use glitches or all use just interesting things to battle and to like to do all kinds of things in these games, and to like it's kind of like today's world where when games go open source and are open to the public and people mod them, it's like that. The some of the games the broken games that he plays, the modding community behind them has modded the game to do all kinds of cool stuff, and where you can do all kinds of stuff. So one of the things that he jumps into is this glitchy fighting game where the developers behind the game have kind of modded it to use different glitches and different things to actually fight and do battles against different players. Really cool kind of aspect of, and also very realistic aspect of kind of that game, but also interesting to see how the fight scenes go and the way the animation is done. Really just interesting things. The fight scenes kind of remind me from something of like, if you've ever seen like Gundam, right? Or whatever, where they have mech battles. There are some really interesting different other fighting games he goes into other than Shangri-La, where you have giant mech battles that seem kind of like Gundam or may remind you of something you've played as a kid, which is fascinating and also really interesting part of this show. And also the other thing I want to bring up is the characters. I love the character building and the way that they introduce kind of the main character as well as other characters in this show. They don't just give you, so in some MMORPG anime titles, they only focus on the main character. This is not the case with Shangri-La. They do bring in, and also with this particular anime, they do bring in a lot of other characters, and you get to know each character, which I think is kind of cool. And they also have kind of a group. It's not just, you're not just following just Sunraku on his adventures. There are other characters that you meet and that he meets throughout the show, where they do a nice job of, okay, they focus on some of their characters, you get to know them, you get to know kind of who he hangs out with, what the characters are doing, and like how they fit into the story, how they help beat some of the gameplay, or how they beat some of the bosses in the games, and all that kind of stuff. They really do tie everything in together really nicely with the characters, and you do get character background, and you get to know each of your characters. That's not always the case with every game genre or MMORPG anime title. They don't always bring in or do a good job of tying in side characters, and I thought that was very well done as characters, as well as just building a really interesting main protagonist, Sunraku. And no, he doesn't always win every time, whereas some MMORPG game anime titles, the main character always wins, and it pisses people off royally, because if you think about playing a game, nobody can ever win 100% of the time. That's nearly impossible, unless you're cheating. So in this one, he doesn't always win every time, and they also the characters are forced to either work together, or just they're forced to come up with different strategies and ways to actually work together, and also to bring in other people to help them, where they can't do it alone, and they could never get anywhere unless they had help, or unless they had a group with them, which is really a really interesting aspect, because a lot of times, if you know anything about playing a game, some games you can't beat by yourself. Yeah, you might be able to get past one or two easy bosses, but you're not going to beat the whole entire game yourself. So really interesting and really cool character building, and just being able to kind of tell you more about the backstory and kind of stuff like that. They tell you, okay, so you have to keep in mind too that a lot of the stuff that you hear with the character building is about his game character, and also they do tell you about they do tell you about the real world a little bit, and they do to give you kind of a backstory of the actual main MC and his actual backstory. But remember that for this particular anime, he is a gamer, so most of his life is spent indoors gaming. So you do find out a little bit about him personally, and also you learn more about his game character and his habits and kind of what he plays and what he does. You also find out about some of the other players and stuff like that, which is great. But keep in mind that it does take place mostly in the game world. Which, if that bothers you, I can see where maybe you wouldn't want to watch this. But if you know anything about anime, the MMORPG anime style and that kind of category of anime, you will know that a lot of the anime does not really focus on a lot of this style anime does not focus on the real world as much. So it really is cool. They have a really good I think this show does a great job of building kind of the characters, and the character designs are great, as well as there's a lot of good humor in here. The characters are funny. So Sunraku himself is actually very funny, as well as other characters in the show. The whole Rabbituza thing that he goes into in the Shangri-La Frontier is amazing and also really funny, but also really cool. It's a cool character aspect, cool design for a side quest, and also kind of other support characters, and kind of bringing in some other interesting and fun characters, but also kind of bringing in it's a good way to connect and bring in and use all of the characters in the show, not just have the main MC be the main focus, but being able to focus on other characters, which is something that I actually like when the writer or creator focuses on not just the main character, but other characters, other side characters, and how they fit and stuff like that. Really, really cool way to build characters, and to be able to bring in multiple characters and not kind of be bored or not have them sitting on the side. They really do use and make use of a lot of other characters other than just the main MC, which is cool. So yeah, that's a really cool concept, and that's something I wanted to mention in this video. One of the other things that I also really thought was really cool about this show, other than the combat and stuff like, and the character development and world building, was the fact that they also do a lot, and also the humor, which is funny. They do a lot of humor and stuff like that. But was the fact that they also do a really cool thing with exploration. So in the show, the main MC and also other side characters, they show not just Sunraku, but other characters in the show who go on side missions and discover things like Rabbituza. Rabbituza was a side quest and a special quest that Sunraku unlocks. Now, he's not the only one to do this. They do. Other characters in the show, other characters that you meet in the show, have done this as well, and also they talk about this. This is a really cool thing, and the fact that there's so many of these, as well as the unique cases and unique monsters and unique scenarios that they put in this, was just really awesome. I like the idea of not only do they suck you into this game world with the amazing world building, humor, character development, and also the unique and also the interesting premise of jumping into a VMO, a virtual world, or a MMORPG game. But they also bring in these unique scenarios inside the game, which is like, okay, so if you played, like, for a good example, if you played like the Batman Arkham games, right? There's a bunch of side quests, a bunch of side things you can unlock. You can, get like special skins and like bat suits and like stuff like that, right? Well, in this game, you can unlock, in this show and in this game, the main character and also other characters can unlock unique scenarios where they bump into unique monsters and also other dimensions within the Shangri-La world. And it is really sick to see how they've kind of implemented this into the storyline, but also brought in and tied in a lot of these unique scenarios, unique creatures, unique battles, and just really it is something to see. Like, if you're not watching this show, this is one that I recommend watching. It is really cool. It's got me hooked. I've watched all the first season, and I'm currently watching the second one. I recommend Shangri-La Frontier. Last thing I do want to mention is personal growth with characters. They do a really good job of showing you when Sunraku first starts, he kind of doesn't know much about the game, and is kind of a newbie. And they do a good job of kind of showing that and kind of building up as the story goes along. Like, he learns the game, he learns how to do different things. He starts out knowing absolutely nothing about some of them, and especially Shangri-La, he starts out as a newbie. Because remember, he's usually playing older titles and broken games. So when he first finds out about Shangri-La in the game store in real life, and buys it, he doesn't know anything about the game world or that particular game, other than like some of his previous experience playing broken or glitchy games. So he comes into Shangri-La Frontier kind of as a newbie, knowing nothing. And they do put a lot of good references, and they tie in a lot of good stuff from actual like scenario, from actual games and playing games. They tie in a lot of realistic features and just realistic things that someone who plays a lot of games. So if you play Fortnite, or if you're a gamer, you would recognize from, or at least, yeah, you would recognize, or you could relate to it if you've ever played a game. For me, I played a lot of old 90s titles. So some of the references they made in it to other games that he's jumped into, some of the old titles and broken stuff he's played. So for example, one of the things that he jumps into is a fighting game, which always reminds me of like Street Fighter or stuff like that. And it's a mech game, but interesting enough, there is actually a Gundam fighting game that reminds me, and they put some references to that in Shangri-La Frontier and also in some of the other games that Sunraku jumps into. They put some references in here. So there are real world references to actual titles in here, which I thought was really cool. And just a lot of the gameplay, a lot of the stuff that's mentioned in here are actual references and kind of they kind of made it kind of more believable by adding real life references and kind of lingo and stuff like into the actual show, which is really cool. Someone really someone did their homework and like added some really cool stuff in here that you as a gamer could relate to, or that anyone who's played a game could relate to. It's really, really, really cool. It's actually very well done. The story is very, very done. The animation is gorgeous. I can't say enough about the animation. So that's one of the other last things I wanted to mention was some of the aspects, and they really did put a lot of kind of references to actual games. Some of them are kind of subtle, so you have to kind of look for them, but there are references, and you'll see some interesting stuff mentioned in here, some pretty funny jokes in here, and just really awesome. So anyway, guys, that's what I have for you guys today. Shangri-La Frontier. If you haven't watched it, go check this anime out. Really awesome show. Like I said, I'm watching the second season. I will keep you guys up to date as I watch the second season, and maybe I'll do another video if you guys like this one. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know if you guys have checked this out yet. Are you watching this currently? And let me know what your thoughts are. Actually, a few of the people that before I even did this video, I did go online and I was talking to a couple people in the anime community and on Discord and other things. A couple people have actually checked the show out and liked it. So let me know what your thoughts are. Are you watching this one? The second season is currently playing or currently streaming, I believe, on Crunchyroll and some other streaming sites, I think. And stay tuned for more. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys. Have a great one.
Hi there. Please subscribe or follow DNA Anime Blog and DNA Studios on all of their social media platforms. Okay, bye!